Imagine a body that never received the signal to stop developing, where bone relentlessly expands beyond human limits. This isn't a myth or a monster movie. It's a terrifying reality for those afflicted with a rare condition where the skeleton becomes a cage. The process begins silently, with a faint, deep ache in the joints, a sensation of pressure building from within, as if the marrow itself is restless. Then comes the smell, a sharp, metallic tang like ozone and old iron that seems to seep from the pores, a scent of the body turning against itself. Every movement becomes a struggle against a creeping stiffness, the touch of one's own skin feeling alien, too tight and unyielding. At night, in the stillness, there's a sound, not from outside, but from within. A low, persistent creaking, like old wood under strain. This is the horror of uncontrolled growth, where the very framework meant to support you becomes an inescapable, painful prison. And for one man, this nightmare was just beginning, as he woke to find his reflection in the mirror no longer looked human. This is not folklore. This is the chronicle of Eleanor Shaw. The first clue was a door, massive, carved with forgotten symbols, built for something far larger than human. Then, a bed, custom fitted, its frame groaning under a weight long absent, the air thick with the scent of dried roses and dust. And finally, a pair of shoes, enormous, delicate satin heels, abandoned on a vast stone floor, waiting in the profound quiet. By 22, she stood 7 feet 8 inches tall, and she was still growing. Each inch came with a deep, sickening thud from within her own frame. But the true terror wasn't her height. It was the relentless toll her skeleton paid for every added centimeter, and the secret her doctors missed for over a decade. In the quiet suburb of Fairview, Ohio, Mark and Linda Shaw welcomed their first child, Eleanor. The air in their home held the faint, sweet smell of baby powder and the warmth of new beginnings. But beneath that warmth, something imperceptible had already taken root. Eleanor was perfect. She was long for her age. Everyone joked she'd be a basketball player. As a toddler, she was just a happy, energetic child who always needed the next size up. By 3rd grade, Eleanor already towered over everyone at her elementary school, teachers included. The pediatrician called it constitutional tall stature, a harmless family trait, just a big, healthy girl. But Linda's smile grew tight, her motherly instinct prickling like a warning. A damp, metallic scent seemed to cling to the air, hinting at something more than mere genetics. The growth wasn't simply upward, it was asymmetrical. Then, at age 12, the headaches began. These weren't normal headaches. It was a vice grip, behind the eyes pain that would make her vomit. Then came the joint pain, knees, ankles, wrists. They ached with the deep, grinding torment of an old woman's bones. Eleanor's world contracted, once vibrant with movement, now compressed to the tight confines of her agony. The air itself seemed to thin and grow sterile, a sharp, metallic scent replacing the warmth of play. Every sound became an intrusion, the distant drip of a faucet, the faint, rhythmic scratch of a branch against a window pane. Her reality had narrowed to a single, unyielding point of cold sensation, a damp chill that seeped into her bones. Finally, the doctors suspected gigantism, a tumor on the pituitary gland, flooding her body with relentless growth hormone. Scans revealed it, a tiny, pea-sized mass lurking deep within her skull. The air in the operating room grew heavy with the sterile scent of antiseptic and the low hum of machinery. With meticulous care, they reached in and removed the source of the nightmare. The Shaws exhaled, believing the nightmare had finally ended. But it wasn't over. Eleanor, now a teenager, winced as her shoulders scraped against the doorframe. A faint scent of ozone and old dust lingered in the air she passed through. Eleanor's growth became unnatural, 2, 3, 4 inches each year, stretching her frame in ways no child should. Her features coarsened, sharpening into something rougher and more angular, while her voice deepened into a gravelly, unfamiliar register. The air around her grew thick with the scent of ozone and damp earth, as if her very presence warped the atmosphere. Each change left a palpable, unsettling weight in the room, a quiet dread that settled into the bones of those who watched. Pain became her constant, screaming companion, a specter haunting her own body. She was a ghost in her own home, her heavy footsteps shaking the floorboards, her frame too large for the furniture that groaned under her weight. At school, classmates didn't just stare. They recoiled, a palpable fear hanging in the air like the scent of ozone before a storm. She was a medical anomaly, a living spectacle that defied explanation and evoked a deep, unsettling dread. It was like watching someone be slowly, physically erased. The funny, smart Ellie we knew was trapped inside this fortress of pain. You'd see it in her eyes. A desperate, flickering confusion. It was a hollow, consuming dread that left a metallic taste in the air. Specialists were confounded. The tumor had vanished, yet her growth hormone levels remained dangerously elevated. A silent, internal storm. The source was an enigma, a ghost in the machine of her own body. Every scan returned empty, a sterile void where an answer should have been. They ran every test imaginable, but Eleanor's towering 7-foot frame remained a medical enigma. Science had exhausted its explanations, leaving only a void of understanding. The air in the room grew heavy with the scent of ozone and antiseptic. A primal dread took hold as the final diagnosis arrived. Eleanor was officially undiagnosed. A young endocrinologist, Sarah Chen, reviewed Eleanor's case. Her focus shifted away from the pituitary gland entirely. Instead, her attention settled on something deeper, something the other scans had missed in the shadows. Her eyes weren't fixed on the tumor, but scanning the space around it. There, she saw a shadow. Not a growth, but a tiny, spectral aberration. It was a minuscule, nearly invisible flaw on a decade-old scan. A speck everyone had missed, nestled cold and forgotten at the base of her skull. Chen's hypothesis was radical and terrifying. What if the growth signal originated not from her brain, but somewhere else entirely? Driven by this unsettling possibility, she ordered an obscure test to search for a growth hormone-releasing hormone from another location in the body. The air in the lab grew thick with the sterile scent of antiseptic and the faint, metallic tang of old blood samples. Then, silence. A profound, heavy quiet that seemed to swallow the very hum of the machines. On a Tuesday afternoon, the phone's shrill ring pierced the quiet. Linda Shaw answered, her hand rising to cover her mouth as the caller spoke. The news was definitive, delivered with clinical finality. The test result was overwhelmingly positive, but Eleanor's body wasn't producing its own excess growth hormone. Something else was pulling the strings. The source was a neuroendocrine tumor, small, benign, and concealed in her pancreas. For over a decade, this silent infiltrator had been whispering chemical commands into her bloodstream. It was a biological puppeteer, flooding her system with a single directive: grow. Hiding in the last place anyone would think to look, it had been rewriting her very biology from within. Every cell in her body had been obeying, relentlessly, destructively. The surgery to excise the malignant growth was intricate, but ultimately successful. The relentless production line within her was finally silenced. The factory, that insidious workshop of ruin, had been shut down for good. Within hours, the relentless biochemical scream that had haunted her since childhood fell silent, her growth hormone levels plummeting to normal. For the first time in her life, Eleanor knew true stillness, an unsettling calm that felt foreign and profound. Present day finds Eleanor, now 24, in a spacious custom-built cottage surrounded by dense, whispering woods. The quiet here is different, thick with the damp smell of earth and the distant, rhythmic tapping of branches against the windows. Sunlight filtered through the window, catching dust motes in the air as Eleanor moved with slow, deliberate agony. Her movements were labored, each shift of her frame accompanied by the subtle creak of overtaxed bones. Yet in her eyes, there was an eerie tranquility, a softness that defied the horror of her transformation. The growth had ceased, but the damage was irreversible. Eleanor Shaw's final measurement: 8 feet, 1 inch tall. Her spine, a cruel arc of osteoarthritis, bowed under decades of unnatural growth. Her heart, swollen and laboring, beat a heavy rhythm against her ribs. Every joint stood as a monument to a lifetime of misdirected, painful development. Chronic pain, her constant companion, now etched itself permanently into her future. Eleanor's gaze holds the camera, her voice carrying the weight of lifetimes. People see a giant. They don't see the decades I spent pleading with my own flesh to simply obey, to stop. The surgeons removed the tumor, but they could never reclaim the stolen years. I don't inhabit a storybook. I dwell in a realm of door frames that stoop too low and chairs that shrink beneath me. My fairy tale was a medical file, thick with sterile pages that smelled of antiseptic and ink. And the twist ending to Eleanor's story wasn't a cure. It was the slow, sticky realization that some doors, once opened, can never be fully closed again. The truth was a gut punch. The monster wasn't lurking in her mind. It was festering deep within her, a malignant speck, smaller than a pencil eraser, with the cold, sticky weight of iron. It stole her childhood, warped her body, and wrote the script of her life in whispers of pain. It remained undetected in plain sight for over a decade. So the next time your joints ache, or a headache blooms behind your eyes, or you wish for just another inch of height, think of Eleanor Shaw and wonder, what if your body was obeying a hidden directive you never knew existed? How much of you is truly you, and how much is just a corrupted signal, lost in transmission?